Welcome to our LB's The Lover of Books author chat. If this is your first time here live or watching a recording, I'm so glad you found us. I've had the honor to interview over 75 debut to best-selling authors, and readers like you have helped my YouTube channel, LB The Lover of Books, grow and amass. We're getting close to 24,000 hours watched. Thank y'all so much for joining in, and I appreciate you taking that time to like and comment as it does help other readers find these videos. Now, I want to introduce you to this one of my all-time favorite authors. Rachel Joyce is an award-winning author of the Sunday Times and international bestsellers, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, must read, Perfect, The Love Song of Miss Queenie Hennessy, The Music Shop, and Miss Benson's Beetle, as well as a collection of interlinked short stories, A Snow Garden, and Other Stories. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Book Prize and longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Rachel has been awarded with Specsaver's New Writer of the Year National Book Award and shortlisted for the UK Author of the Year. That's pretty impressive. Miss Benson's Beetle was the winner of the 21 Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Prize. And I saw on your Instagram, which we'll have to talk in a little bit, that it was made into a play on stage. So we'll have to discuss that. But her novels have sold over 5 million copies worldwide in 36 languages. But y'all, I'm thinking these numbers are old and her website needs to be updated. So I'm sure it's quite a bit more. But welcome, 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 Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We are so excited. And just so everybody remembers, this is a spoiler full conversation. So it's assumed you have read. And we're just going to hop straight into this book. First of all, Rachel, where did you get this idea? When did it start to percolate and grow? And why did you choose this book to be your next project?
Well, it actually started it's about 20 years ago. I had the idea when my dad actually died in the south of in France, and I had to go with my sisters to bring his body, and my mum, who was with him at the time, home. And I just remember it being such a chaotic time. I mean, it was a sort of brilliant time. We laughed like we'd never laughed in our lives, which will sound strange, but I think we were just in the middle of this grief that completely took the ground from under our feet. And I thought of it as a very lawless time afterwards, a quite kind of anarchic time within families. And we're a close family. But so I always thought I really want to write about this time again, but it's taken me a very long time to kind of feel in the right place to write about family and sort of the kind of that sort of upside down thing that I think can happen within families when you lose, I mean, any traumatic event in a family, but I think especially the death of a parent, where it's sort of as if all the rules that you've understand throughout your whole life get reversed or overturned, or the sort of possibility for both emerges.
Well,
Um,
you gave a few little clips in there I want to go back to. One
mhm,
was the lawlessness of it. I
mhm,
find very interesting word to use. And then the
mhm,
other one I would like you to talk about is you said that y'all have never loved so much as in that moment. And how
mhm.
can those two things
I know.
be in the same same
Yeah.
concept? If you can just elaborate.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in terms of the sort of, I think it's at a time of such extreme emotion that you almost, it's as if you almost don't, it's like everything is up for grabs about who you are and what you are. And I think especially in your place within family. And and your place within the family, I think, is so prescriptive as to who you are as a person, or has been. And even if you're trying to sort of break free of that. So it sort of really felt with my sisters anyway, as if for the first time in our lives, it might all go askew. You know, like I'm the oldest, but there were times it felt as if the middle sister might actually want to take the central position because she was much more organized than I am. And sort of and then my younger sister, it sort of felt at times as if she might kind of want to have nothing to do with either of us. And then there were times when I thought I don't want to have anything to do with that. It's sort of everything felt new. And yet at the same time, we were so connected and we all had at that point young, quite young families. So we'd had to sort of take ourselves away from, the families weren't with us. We'd all gone on our own. So left husbands, children behind. And so having this sort of very fixed new identity that we had as mothers sort of all also felt open or not up for grabs, but sort of not as stable as before. And we did sort of revert in lots of ways to being children. And we did just like really laugh at things that just were, I don't even remember what can have been funny, but I do remember that we just fell about laughing at times. And then other times we were sort of just, like traumatized by what we were going through.
Now, you said this happened 20 years ago, but it took
Yeah.
some time to get to the point
Hmm.
to write about it. What was it that made you feel comfortable writing this novel now? And it happened in Spain, but you set this one in Italy. So I was just
Yeah.
curious, what changed?
I think, well, it took me a long time to kind of find the right voice for the book because it's a little bit different in terms of tone, this book. And I think it took a certain amount of confidence actually to feel in a space where um, I could kind of write in that. I think before now, I've pretty much written in spaces that are quite small. And often the big drama has sort of happened off stage, if you like. Whereas this book is much more, the drama is happening right there on the page. And it's kind of quite sort of frenzied at times. Um, and I think it just took a lot more confidence to be able to write in that way. I don't think I felt ready before. And I really felt the subject demanded it. Because I do think every book that you write has a different voice. And it's almost, not something you can anticipate or plan. It's just what the story demands or the characters demand. And this felt more complex. So I think it did take quite a few books to feel in a position to write that kind of book.
Which of your characters was the most
Mm.
demanding of you?
Well, I mean, they're always demanding, all of them, everything, that because you have to find them. And then once you start finding them, they seem remarkably easy and kind of present, and you can't imagine them not being around. But I'd say of this set of characters, probably Iris was the hardest to pin down, the youngest one. And she is actually quite a fluid person. She doesn't have a strong sense of her own identity. So I think maybe that was one of the reasons it was quite hard to really, I mean, I kind of superficially I really got her, but as the book went on, I found I really had to work at her chapters to find out what was really going on for her.
And I feel like that was part of her arc too, though, that she really didn't know her own self. And
No,
it
she
wasn't
doesn't.
until the end when she really
No.
came into her own.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like your writer intuition was right there in her character.
I think that's completely so. Yeah. I mean, she is unformed, really. The beginning of the book, she's kind of still a 4 year old in many ways. And she's so hidden, even from herself, um, that yes, I think that was the reason. But it's quite hard to write that kind of character in a kind of lucid, present way
Mhm.
when they're quite hidden and opaque.
Well, I do agree that this book has a different feel than your other
Mhm.
books. And it's like you say, it's on scale, but it's
Mhm.
also in temperament, I feel. And also, I don't know, it's hard to put my finger on it, but it was, I mean, Harold Fry had some very serious moments. So it's not the seriousness of the topic.
No.
It's what do you put your finger on that makes it so different?
I mean, I'm still struggling a bit to work out what it was, but I think it has more intensity
Hmm.
and and it's also, I mean, a book like Harold Fry is so kind of full of wonder and sort of innocence, really. And I mean, it is about a man opening up to the world. So it's a very different, the whole setup is very, very different. Whereas this one does feel more like I was saying earlier, it's like sort of going into the fire, really. And so all those conversations that probably somebody like Harold would really avoid, this lot really go for. And they're
Well,
younger, you know, they're younger. It just did demand a whole, not a whole different approach, but I felt it did demand a different tone.
well, I am glad that you had the confidence to go there, and I hope you continue to push
Thank you.
yourself because it is a phenomenal novel. And I still hear your voice and your beautiful writing throughout, but it did. It just had a different to it, and
Mhm.
I really appreciated it. I will also say that the setting itself seemed like a character to me, and that's not always the case, but for here, the description of the island, its inhabitants, with the people's homes and the abbey, it was just described in such detail.
Mhm.
I wanted to know about, is this a real place for you? And if so, what kind of research, or if not, what kind of research did you have to do? Because it really did just lift off the page right into my imagination.
Good, I'm glad. I mean, it is real. Lake water is real. So, very early on, I thought this is a story about reflection and projection and how we think we see the truth, but our vision is often warped by our own experience, our own prejudice, our own preconceptions, projections. So everything in the book has at least a double meaning or a double, you know, everything in the book. So I thought it very definitely has to be a book, a story set by a lake. That seems really important, that water and that idea that actually, you know, what you see in the water can sometimes seem more clear than the reality. So I spent a long time thinking about where it would be. But the other thing about that summer when my dad died was it was unspeakably hot. It was that very European, very, you know, so hot that you sort of, you just, you can't, I mean, it's so hard to write about when it's not that hot because it's so hard to put yourself back in there. But where it's so hot, you sort of, every time you walk into the sun, you feel exposed. And where your brain sort of like your whole head feels boiled really and sort of so all your thoughts are working faster, you know, it's just all too hot. So I thought I've got to set it during that kind of heat wave again. So I had the heat and the lake, and for all those reasons I thought it's got to be somewhere that isn't somewhere, you know, British that I know. So I started researching Italian lakes, and I did know a few because it happens I've done a few literary festivals on some amazing Italian lakes. Um, but I also thought it has to be somewhere that isn't really well known. And then I started reading about this very small lake called Lake Orta, which the Italians kind of call their sort of Cinderella lake, a sort of not really very known lake. And the more I read about it, the more I thought this place sounds amazing. So then I managed to go, and I will never forget. We were sort of flying into Milan and then driving from Milan for about an hour and a half to this, and you sort of don't see any lake, and then suddenly you kind of you go around a bend and down a curve, and you're sort of quite high up, and you're going through trees, and suddenly you see this bowl of blue. I have never seen anything as blue as this lake before us. And because it's a small one, you can actually be at one, certainly at the width of it, you can see very easily from one side to the other. But I just saw it and thought, this is just, I've never seen anything like this before. And then as you come right down to it, there is this tiny island in the middle that is just like this perfect little stone crown, and it gets illuminated by lights during the night. So then you do get all these sort of reflections of light happening in the water. And the more time, and we were only there for about 3 days, but the lake was a different color, I swear, every time I looked at it. And it was one of those moments as a writer where you just sort of get little little goosebumps because you think, I've absolutely found the place where this story should be set. And also, I've really fallen in love with the place. And I think as a writer, when you fall in love with somewhere, that sense of wonder that infuses the writing is a really important part of the process. So as soon as I had the lake, I could just see everything. And then I started to see, the house where I thought it would be set. And then I went off and I found the police station. I found the walk to the police station where they would go. I found the bars that they would go to, the restaurants that they would go to. Because everything that they did, I felt if I knew it, it would just give the book a sort of, given that everything is made up, you just keep landing the story in some ways
Well, the setting,
in
it
the
does.
real.
I mean, it does. It grounds it. And
Did.
the children loved this island. I mean, I mean, the lake, you can just feel it. But what
Yeah,
interests me is when you were talking about traveling and not seeing it and going through this dark, and it's almost the journey that the kids were
yeah,
on to find this purpose, this reflection, as you put it, again. It was quite a bit your journey just getting there.
it was. And
Uh,
it was. And I think I went back about twice, but the last time I wasn't even supposed to go. We were supposed to be somewhere else. And then my husband at the last minute realized he had to go on another trip. And I said to him, listen, I'm just going to go. I think he felt a bit bad because we were supposed to be going away together. So I said, I'm just going to go on my own. And it's very rare for me now to go away somewhere like that on my own because we try to share these things. So to have this experience of being somewhere that I was writing about where there was nobody to communicate. I mean, I just literally was on my own and I took a room right on the lake in this sort of bed and breakfast place. So I kind of sleep and wake crazy hours. So I could wake in the middle of the night and the island would be right ahead of me. And instead of having to say to my husband, listen, I'm really sorry, I'm awake again, or, trying to go to sleep, I just got up or I went out and I walked. I mean, I just was so kind of connected up with the place
mhm.
that it felt like a really precious part of the writing process that I don't normally have.
Well, I'm getting the goosebumps now.
I really recommend it, honestly.
I know
The
I
most
want to go so
beautiful
bad.
place.
Well, I also never thought that the heat wave would have been something that you experienced in this very
Mm.
dramatic, life-changing moment. I
Mm.
definitely thought it was an intended thing because it does put everybody on edge in a
Yeah.
way. And like you said, you're exposed. Like it just seemed like such a masterful layer for this already uncomfortable family to be an
Yeah.
extra level of it in it.
Yeah.
So I thought it's interesting how much you pulled from your own experience. Um,
Yes. I think I did. I mean, I probably pushed it further, but I think always with stories, you kind of have to think in a horrible way as a writer. You think, well, what is going to make this the most difficult?
yeah. Well,
And,
just look at
that kind of
flip
heat wave.
flops. I mean, we knew with the flip flops how bad it was going to be. Okay, you talked double meaning. I want you to explain a little bit about this and how you maneuvered this throughout the book because it's really masterful. And what some of your favorite parts of that double meaning.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the obvious one is the whole Bellamy part of the story. So I knew very early on that I was writing about a family in that sort of period of like the lawlessness that we've talked about, breakup, but a family that, I mean, this isn't something I've experienced, but a family that certainly the children, their lives are so kind of fixed around their father and his ego, really, that they've never really broken free. They don't really have any clear, I mean, even though they've been very successful as people in different degrees, they don't really, I would say, have a clear sense of their own ego or identity outside one another. So, so for the, I sort of thought, well, what will this story take? And I felt it did need a catalyst. It did need a Bella May figure. Um, and very early on, I was thinking of someone like Yoko Ono when she met the Beatles, when she met John Lennon, the effect that she had, and the way that certainly the British public reacted against her, and again projected so much onto this figure about whom they knew nothing really, because they felt so threatened. So I was very interested in what we do with an outsider. So with Bella May, I I began by kind of like writing scenes where, I thought she would meet the siblings, or I mean just a number of scenes where I thought, she'll come in. And every time I began to write these scenes, she just didn't show up as a character. And I began to think, well, this is really interesting. Like I can't pin her down, but also she seems unwilling to participate. And so, I kind of thought, well, this is an interesting dynamic. How do I use this? And then because I mean, I do have a very far, far away background in theatre where I spent a good 20 years of my life where I was working in theatre and doing plays like Shakespeare and Chekhov, Ibsen, and just thinking how in a lot of great plays you can get a very important character who's really spoken of a lot before they walk on stage. And it has a really interesting effect on the audience because you start to make up your mind very, very early on as to who this person is. So not only is your own brain working with all your associations and experience to kind of pack up who this person might be, but you're also learning a lot about the other characters by what they say about this person. So I just thought, well, how long can I leave it before she comes on? And it now is the middle page. I think it is just about the middle page I left it, which is quite late on to leave a middle character. And there were times where I thought this is crazy. You can't do this. But it did feel very right for the story that the reader should be, because this is a book about, as I said, about art, about reflection, about double meanings, that the reader should be doing a lot of work of their own before we actually meet this central character. But in terms of double meaning, it just felt as if everything in the book has another side to it. So that like Vic's paintings, you realize, you sort of think that he's one artist, and then you realize at the end that he has been trying to do something else. It's just that it's so enmeshed in his own ego that it's just a horror story. The house itself, reflected by the lake, the children themselves who just have never, they present themselves to the world as one thing, but they have an inner life, I would say, that is still kind of quite childlike and not developed. And then the whole kind of just the sort of Laszlo, Bellamy, are they, aren't they together? What is going on? Where is the painting? All these things are just sort of like, they're sort of, it's a bit like when I think I put it at the end of the book, it's a bit like when you see those big paintings where you have the main story at the front, but then there's a mirror image or there's something at the back which gives you a reflection of the artist, but right at the back, so that you just get a sense of perspective that is kind of there all along, but often we don't get to see, that perspective, or we don't get to invite it into the story. That's what I was trying to play with.
Well, and I love that the children are trying to figure all of that out, not only about their father, but now where do they fit in this family dynamic that
Yeah.
it's changed. And, sometimes they feel very comfortable in it, and then other times it's major fracture. How did you go about deciding how this family would interact, and have your siblings read this book?
I'll just do the last bit first and say yes. My sister, both my sisters did, and it was obviously it was. I mean, obviously they know I write, and I did tell them very early on that I wanted to write about that period, and they were both fine about it. Um, but when it came to giving them the book, I did feel a bit. I did because when you write it, when you're writing, you're in this sort of wonderful place of it's just private, and you're not having to worry about will anyone like this, or you're just writing the thing. And I mean, it's the bit I love. And so I felt very free. And then, I finish it, and then I obviously have to show it to my editor. I've got to sort of show it to somebody, but also I had to let my sisters see it. And I did suddenly feel very worried about that. And one of them often reads stories that I've written, sort of, she often reads them quite early on, but I'd left it a bit with this one. And I think to begin with, she didn't like it. She found it, she found it too tough. And but she was very sweet about that. And it sort of took me a while to, I mean, and it was early days, so you are finding it, but I think it was maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And so then I did work on that. And then my other sister just was very funny, and she said, "Yeah, it's great, but which one is me?"
Well, I think one of the biggest parts of this book is we should be feeling uncomfortable, not only with what assumptions we've made about other people, but about ourselves as well, and how we, like you say, there's a certain role that you feel like you need to fill or have been prescribed to fill in
Yeah.
each family.
Yes.
And so I can see that, and that's the reason why I asked it, is because, looking back, knowing that this has happened to your family, I know it would have put me on edge to show a sibling, not because it's not beautifully written, but what assumptions are they going to make coming into this?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think I don't know whether it's the reason I've avoided writing about siblings before. I don't think it is really, but I think the trouble, I think when you have a writer in the family, you're probably always wondering, what is you in the books. It's just inevitable. And I think they've got pretty used to the idea it isn't them, but it does take a bit of explaining
Yeah.
that it isn't. And I mean, I end up thinking that this lot particularly, you end up taking a small part of yourself and then just pushing it into another place until it becomes another character. So Netta is the oldest, as I am. And I think she is very used to that sense that she's her father's second in command. She expects to come first. Um, and that's one of the reasons she's so confused by Bella May. And what happens with Susan is that she's used to Susan being a little behind her. And suddenly Susan has this sort of the death of Vic kind of opens up a whole side in her that has just been completely suppressed. And it is her awakening in lots of ways. But for Netta, that's incredibly um, threatening because it's just seeing this person that you thought was one thing. And so that relationship that you have with that one thing has kind of defined who you are. And then suddenly they don't seem to be who they were anymore. So where does that leave you? And what is your relationship with one another? And again, I think this weird unspoken thing that happens within families when you lose a parent is a sort of very central question which nobody ever asks, which is who's the top then? Who's the head of state now? And I mean, I'm expressing it in a much bigger way, but I think in some very basic, raw way, that is going on within families. And
Yeah.
nobody wants to say it because it's too difficult and unpleasant to say.
The hierarchy means more in our society than we want to
Yeah.
admit. But I will say that each of the characters did change, and it's always the decision, do you stay together and
Mhm.
grow with the change or not.
Mhm.
And part of this novel was them being separated at the end for
Mhm.
a good chunk of time.
Mhm.
Did you always know that there would be this fracture and that it would take Gustav to get and Gustav's fiance
Yeah.
to make them come back together again?
Yeah, I did know I couldn't see, given the way that I'd set up the family and the dynamics between the family, I couldn't honestly see how they would survive that kind of rift that happens when, with the fallout, with when they kind of find out the whole truth, that actually it would just feel easier for them all to walk away and never see one another really, apart from Goose, who's really trying to hold it all together still. But for the sisters, that it would be easier just to walk away from one another. And so then my question was, well, what would it take to bring them back together? And what happens beyond the end of the story, I don't know. I noticed that in the end of the US, they copy. I think it maybe is in the paperback copy. They've got questions for readers coming up, and one of the questions is, "Do you think the family will stay together after this?" And I thought that's a really interesting question. I'd love to know what people thought.
I'm such an optimist that I would. I mean, I felt so bad for Goose because
Mhm.
he had such a trauma, not just losing his father,
Yeah.
but finding out how much his father betrayed him in
Mm.
such an egotistical, manipulative way that changed the course of his life. And
Yeah.
then the girls knowing, the sisters knowing, and yet they're not there for him. It blew my mind. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic with Goose and because I mean it was such a critical part of the story, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear your take on it.
Yeah, well, when I started writing it, I think, even though I knew it was four perspectives, and actually you get a tiny bit of Bellamy as well, so and a tiny bit of Vic, but it is mainly the point of views of the siblings. But I don't think that any book can really belong to four characters. I think it always has to be like the spine of the book has to belong to somebody. And very early on, I don't really know who this book belongs to. And then as I began to write it, I thought it belongs to Goose. This is his book. Because out of all of them, I mean, I feel they all need, I was going to say mothering. That's the word that came to me because they do. They all need repairing, but he needs it the most of all. And because, as you said, that his father has been a monster with him. I mean, he's recognized the artist. He's recognized that the true artist in the family is his son, and he cannot bear that his son is greater than him. So he has done everything he can to kind of to crush that and to keep that spirit as close to him as possible so that it won't grow, and sort of threaten him. I mean, it's biblical. Um, so so it has to be his story because he is the one out of all of them. They all need, God knows, they all need looking after, but Goose needs it out of all of them, which is why I felt the story has to belong to him because the story has to repair him. And when I realized that he was going to meet somebody at the end, that was great. It was really lovely. And I didn't know it for a long time. And then I think I saw a line somewhere, something like we fell in love through walking, I saw, and I thought, I don't even remember where I saw it, somewhere or other, some magazine or something. And I thought, oh, that is how I will start Goose's that final section off.
Well, Bellamy is such an interesting character. Like you said, we don't really get her
Mhm.
until the middle of the book, and there's so much, I don't know, just guess game as to what happens. But when you said they need mothering, I feel like she did that as the youngest character in so many
Yeah,
ways for
yeah,
each of them. Whether
yeah.
it was, telling Susan it's okay. to be yourself and love yourself,
Hmm.
to Iris giving confidence, or Goose telling him that he is the true artist. I mean,
Yeah.
in some way, she mothered them,
Yeah.
whether or not she knew it, wanted to, or not.
No, I agree. I think she does. I mean, I think out of all of them, I'd say she is the real artist. And I'd say, she is a bit, there is something mothering about her, but there is also something, again, that sort of mirroring, that she is the one who sees who they really are and who reflects it back at them. And in a way that is not mother-like, in that it is without, there's nothing sort of clouded about her view. It's kind of dispassionate, it's sort of objective, and it's unclouded by sentiment, her view on them, so that she is able to sort of challenge them. And for me, the idea that she is the whole time that she's there up in that studio, kind of just collecting what she thinks they are as people, I find I found really, just really interesting. And that conversation where she comes down to Goose right at the end when, everybody's gone, and yeah, sort of tells him as it is. And they sort of connect in a way. I mean, at one point I thought, oh, will they end up as really, really good friends? And then I thought, no, actually, she needs to move on. She needs to go on to the next thing she does, because she is this sort of dispassionate observer of the truth. She is the lake.
Yes. Well, I think the other interesting part of her character is because she is so direct and, like you said, not passionate, but very thoughtful, it
Hmm.
makes that mystery hold throughout, even once we meet her, because we're not sure what her motives are. Is it psychopath, like is it she's so smart she's able to manipulate, or is she just giving that reflection? And you did make the reader work for that one, and I appreciated it.
Good.
All right, let's talk about her as an artist, though, because, at the very end, we find out about her art installation. This
Hmm.
was a very extravagant, large scale piece. When did you know that this was happening, and how did you visualize such a piece for this novel?
Uh, I mean, I knew that I was trying to find what her art would be. Uh, you know, a while on, what would have happened to her? Where would she have gone? And I hadn't finished writing the book at all when we went to Madrid, because my youngest daughter was there doing a year away at university in Madrid. And while we were there, we saw some amazing sculptures, like huge, sort of big public sculptures out, out in where they'd taken down some of the big old statues and replaced them with very modern pieces of art. And one of them was I mean, huge. I can't begin to describe how big it was. A woman's head in the middle of a square. What it was just a complete. It sort of was white in its coloring, but it reflected. So it meant it reflected light, so it could become all sorts of colors. So it was again a reflective thing. And I thought that is really interesting. And the more I looked at sculpture in Madrid, the more I found these quite subversive pieces of art. And then I sort of started finding out about sculptures that you don't normally find. And there was one in Madrid, there's a big sculpture called the Fallen Angel in one of the big parks, which was one of the big classic ones. But then someone has made another sculpture called the Fallen Angel. And it's just, you have to really walk to find it. And it's really high up. And it is an angel that's crashed into a rooftop. So basically, you get the bottom half of the angel. The top half is presumably smashed through the top of the building. I just thought this is so interesting what art is doing, where it's moving with the times. And then the more I read about sculpture, modern sculpture, and this idea that you don't want to fix art in a particular time. Again, you want to reflect, you want to keep it moving. Um, so I began to think this is really the kind of art that I think this woman would do. And it was all new for me. So I just had to kind of investigate the idea and imagine further with go with the idea. But that was how her particular art began to emerge for me. And then the last chapter of the book, I had always imagined a very different ending. And that's what I thought I was writing towards. And as I got to it, I realized that I was being as guilty as I thought the reader would have been early on of rushing to a kind of conclusion about Bella May that limited her with my own prejudice about what that kind of woman might be. And actually, that made the whole book smaller. And where I think the idea was that Goose saw her a number of years later and she was with another family. And it was the idea that the whole story was just about to happen all over again. And then I just thought that is just so offensive to this woman I've created. There's a bigger, much bigger twist, or a bigger turn to this story. And that's when I thought I kind of got this idea for this huge piece of art that she would have created, that would be a male figure for the first time in her life, but would be him, would be this big, I mean, patriarchal figure. There's absolutely no getting, and he is made of the kind, he's a huge patriarchal figure that is kind of created by pieces of the feminine. And that's what I thought, that is so right for her, but so right for what the message of the book kind of is.
Yes, totally agree. I felt like it made the book even bigger,
Good.
and didn't capture it, like you said, in such a small place. But it was also peculiar to me that the interpretation of this sculpture was an invitation for dance or war. And this seems to be sort of a bigger theme because each sibling's interpretation of every action and conversation and how they viewed it or perceived it was war that led to their family split. They could
Yeah.
not perceive the dance,
No.
only the war. And
Yeah.
it seems like such a, like, I want to go back. I'm going to reread that last bit because there was so much in there. I felt like I'm not getting it all, but it was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But it was an ending, it was one of those endings that I didn't see coming, which is quite rare for me because normally I think I know where I'm going. So it felt really good that the book surprised me right at the end, that it kept doing that to me.
Well, you had quite a bit of those moments with the
I
lake
did.
and with this. So it sounds, I mean, um, it's so special. All
Thank
right.
you.
I am going to ask some rapid fire questions for you, Rachel. Are you ready?
I'm really bad at these, just to warn you.
Okay, here we go then. We'll hang on for dear life. All right.
Yeah.
2 to 3 words that describe you as a driver.
Oh gosh, slow, careful.
All right. What is your family description of you amongst your sisters? Like, what's your perceived role?
Um, oh gosh, quite serious. Uh, what would be the opposite? I'm not good at games. What's the opposite to that?
But not this game.
Yeah, that one.
All right. This was a phrase that you used. Would you choose impoverished but happy or rich and lonely?
Oh, definitely impoverished but happy.
Then there were a couple of choices of words which I thought were interesting. Do you say perfume or scent?
I would say perfume, but my editor, who is better bred than I am, would say scent.
Couch or sofa?
Aha, I'd say settee.
Oh, okay. There's a twist. When eating a pear, do you cut it with a knife? And fork, or do you eat it straight from your hand?
Straight from my hand.
Same. What's your Italian dish of choice?
Hmm. Well, I did have this most amazing, it was, well, it was like a rigatoni. I mean, I describe it in the book.
Okay.
When they go for that big, big meal, I didn't eat everything that they eat that day, but I ate a lot of it.
Yum,
And it was an amazing meal.
yum. White
Mm.
or red wine?
Generally white.
Still or sparkling water?
Oh, sparkling. Yeah.
And last one, what's the first Coldplay song that comes to mind?
Oh God. I'm going to say Fix You, which I actually hate. Um, because my sister did play it all the time when my dad died, and it just drove me insane. I was just, but anyway, she loved it.
Well, thank you so much for playing the game. Carol, do you want to ask a question? You'll need to unmute though.
Okay, thank you so much for all your books. I loved all of them. Miss Benson's Beetle is a book that I recommend to everybody. So thank you for,
Good.
I love all of them. But I wanted to ask about the play because I follow you on Instagram and I know that it's coming to London, although I'm far away in LA. But how did like Passenger get involved in the music?
Oh, for the music of Harold, this is Harold Fry.
Yeah,
Well, it was just a production company who thought of bringing him in and seeing if he was interested. And I think they went to him initially, and he said, "No, I don't. I don't do that." And then he read the book, and he felt that we both had quite a similar outlook, and that he would be really interested. And so we've been working together for, I mean, it's about 5 years now
wow, for this one show?
for this one show. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
I've
it
heard.
had it ran in a theatre this year in Chichester. It had its opening, and it did really, really well, which was great. And that's why they're transferring it to the West End in
Yeah,
January.
I've heard some of the songs just based on what you've
Yeah.
posted, and it sounds great, and it was
Yeah,
a
they
wonderful
are.
show. Yeah. Oh,
Good. No, I mean it was an amazing experience, and hearing the book as song, it's just sort of, it's extraordinary.
well,
Wonderful.
I hope it plays for a long time. So when I go to the UK, I could go to the
Well,
West
I
End.
hope so too.
Good
Thanks,
luck.
Carol. Great question. All right, if anybody else has a question, please raise your hand. I am though going to follow up on this because she did mention Miss Beetle, Benson's Beetle is one of my favorites too. But can you talk a little bit about that theater side to it because it just looks so fun.
It was fun. I mean, this one, I mean, I've written the script for the musical of Harold Fry, so I've been really, really closely involved in it. But the Miss Benson's Beetle, I'd read the script. They sent me the script, and I read it briefly, and but I didn't know anything about it. And then I went to see the show, and actually, the first time I saw it, I think I put this on Instagram. Honestly, honest to God, it rained. I mean, you would not believe the rain. And this theatre is an outside theatre. It's right by the sea. It's spectacular, but you wouldn't. I mean, you just didn't matter where you were because you got so wet. And the idea nobody leaves. It's just like this sort of very stoical thing. You keep going unless there's sort of lightning and your life is in danger. I think they don't stop show. So anyway, we saw it, and I just thought it was great. But I just couldn't really get away from the fact that I was so wet. And by the end, when Enid died, I just thought, please don't fall down because you're going to land in this huge puddle, as she did, because it was so wet. But it was brilliant. And then I went to see it again a few nights later with my editor. And this night was just a spectacular night. And because the setting is so extraordinary of this theatre, which is sort of carved out of the rock by the sea, so that you see you're in full light at the start, and then you see the sun going down, and then you see the moon coming up, and everything added to just how wonderful this production was. And I watched it, and to be honest, I'd sort of forgotten a lot of, not the book, I mean, I know the story, but I'd forgotten some of the intricacies of the story. And I was watching it thinking, well, this is a bit bonkers, but it does kind of work.
Mhm.
And by the end, I thought, I'm pretty sure there's another book here. And I'd sort of never thought there would be a sequel. But I watched it and thought, I can see the sequel. I know exactly what needs to happen next. So it was all rather wonderful, really, because I sort of thought I've come away with this wonderful sense of the book again and the story, but also how it would continue.
Oh, I am so thrilled to hear that news. Like, yay. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I love those characters. Like, I just love it, love it, love it.
Good. I
Oh
tell
my
you what,
God.
I mean, Enid Pretty was just, she was, I mean, Marjorie was gorgeous, but Enid is so batty, it just really worked. Theatrically, it really worked. And it did remind me that actually, I think a lot of my writing, because I have this background in theatre, I think I do push things in quite a theatrical way. I do, I can't resist, even if I try to be really serious and sort of like really contain things, I can't help pushing things to just that sort of slightly where, where they're teetering on not unreal, but sort of the more dramatic. I think it's just in me. But seeing this production, I was really reminded of that, of
Well,
just,
we had several of those moments with Susan and Laszlo. So I'm
oh, right.
pushing those
Yes, we
limits.
did.
Go ahead, Shantha.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for being here. First, I wanted to tell you how much I loved your book. I've read many books this year, and it's definitely one of my favorites for the year, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very
You
much.
Thank you. You did talk a lot about the sculpture already earlier, but I did, I was kind of fascinated with the whole concept. And of course, the name of that is brilliant anyway, just in what it means. But I'm wondering, I pictured the sculpture as kind of this massive, almost awkward piece of art. And
Mhm.
can you kind of elaborate in your mind how you pictured it and why you kind of made it a little awkward and clunky, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I thought of it as as like one of those huge, I mean, I thought about Hyde Park, like, one of these big parks in that we set, one of these big public spaces, where you get a few of these sort of, sort of the statues, but that it would be so big that it would really dominate the space. And also that it would sort of have this quality that you couldn't tell whether it was emerging out of the earth or whether it was going to fall back into the earth. And that it would be made of, or as I was saying earlier, all these sort of bits of sort of quite female details, like sort of bits from childhood and safety pins and bras and, just like made up of the female, but so very masculine that it is either going to take over or it's about to crash. But it did seem to me to reflect where I felt we are kind of in the world, really, for me. So I very early on, I said to a friend of mine, I'm going to write a book about the downfall of the patriarchy. And she said, oh, great, interesting. Go ahead, good luck with that. And I mean, obviously, I did what I did with it, but I think it is about, in many ways, the book is about a patriarchy of a kind and how Bella May kind of overturns it with her energy, which is so sideways and unexpected and true to itself. And so, how the piece of art that she creates is a kind of real question about what the patriarchy is and its ability to sustain itself.
Thank you.
I loved it. I absolutely love that
Yeah.
Bella May came into her own, and we know it now. It's not like a question, you know. Allison, you have a question you would like to ask. Go ahead.
Just a comment. First of all, thank you both for doing this. Rachel, your book was great. And I'll speak sort of on behalf of Doris Dumoulin, who's on here too. We read your book for our book club. Doris and I picked it. And it was amazing as a book club book. And I think every book club out there should read it because your characters were so incredibly rich and it gave us so much to talk about. And none of us saw it the same way, which is what makes it for such a great book club book. And all of us were sort of like, really? I didn't see it that way, but you opened my eyes. And it was really such an amazing discussion. And I think that's because it's such an amazing book. So I just want to share that with you. And if this book could get into more and more book club groups, Laura Beth and I talked about that a little bit earlier, like if more and more people could just sort of hear about this book, I think, and I think book clubs is a great way to do it because our book club just found the conversation really fascinating. So we just wanted to tell you that because it really was just a great conversation for us. So thank you for that because it was great for us. That was it. No question.
I like that. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And thank you, Doris, too, for joining. Appreciate both of y'all being here. And yes, I would say for all of us, if we can get this book in more people's hands, I feel like it hasn't received the traction that it so deserves. It's such a phenomenal book. Um, well, I will ask what are you working on something right now that you can tell us about? I mean, I know you mentioned possible sequel. Is that years down the, like, where are we right now in the Rachel Joyce
In the
book?
Rachel Joyce, well, I mean, I've been very, I do a lot of work for radio, or I have done in the past. And so this year I knew that there was the musical of Harold Fry. That was the big thing. And then there were a lot of publicity over here for The Homemade God. So that actually gets in the way of writing, really. But I have adapted for radio Pride and Prejudice, which is coming out in the UK in December. So that was fun. And now I'm doing, which is like putting my head in a wasp's nest. I'm adapting Gone with the Wind for radio, which is, yes, it's it's huge. And it's a very, it's kind of very sensitive. So it's really interesting, but it's doing my head in, quite frankly.
I would say you like to dabble, but you don't really dabble. You
Yeah,
dive into so
that is
many
not
forms
dabbling.
of
I don't think anyone can dabble with Dawn with the Wind. There's just no
no,
dabbling.
and just so many forms of art. I just
Yeah, I am. I'm really interested. I mean, because I was began as a radio writer. I mean, I'm a dramatist, as you know. I'm very interested in the different forms through which you can tell stories and what you learn by doing it in the different formats. So I think I will keep trying. I don't know that I'm not sure that I will be writing another film, but I do, I mean, I love the opportunities to write in different formats. But the novel is the thing I love most of all, like an original novel. And so I already had an idea that I'm working on, and next year I will just, I'll go under, I'll hide away. But I think, I mean, the one after that will be the sequel to Miss Benson's Beetle. It's just arrived, it's one of those books you don't always get them where the whole idea just arrived. And so you think, well, I better write it then.
well, I'm so excited for its arrival. And Jill brought up a great point. If you thought her voice sounded familiar, she is the narrator of this book. Is that from your radio background? Like you just know, was that always a given that you wanted to do the
Well,
narration?
I don't know. I mean, because I acted for years, I thought, and now certainly in the UK, there's more of an interest in writers reading their own books. I think there's quite an appetite for it. It didn't used to be the case, and certainly, I don't know that anyone would have suggested it before. But with this one, somebody said, "Would you, what would you think about doing it?" And I thought, yeah, I definitely would because actually it felt quite personal. As I've explained to you, the story felt quite personal. So I did do it, and I found it a really interesting process. I mean, I really didn't want to act it up. And I realized that the audiobook is a very personal thing. Some people love the kind of big voices, the big storytelling. Personally, I don't. I like it when I just hear the story and then I can make up my mind about, what, as I can when I read the book, that it's, I don't like it when there's so much acting going on, I can't really hear the story. But I think, so as a process, it was an amazing thing to do, to sort of read the book and like put every word to bed, as it were, just kind of finish it. But I did read, I've read, I really do my best to not read critiques if I can help it, because they can be so damaging. They can just be so hurtful. But somebody said to me, oh, the audiobook's doing really well. So I looked at it, and the first thing I read was somebody saying, this is the most appalling reading. And so I just thought, I'm never, ever, ever looking at this ever, ever again, because it's, that's all I will now be able to think of, is that I shouldn't possibly read another book.
Do not listen. Jill posted on here. It was excellent. She thought it was perfect, and I
Okay.
agree. I really, and I'm harsh. They all know I'm very harsh on
Are you?
narrators, and you did an excellent job. And so that's why, and now knowing how, not, it's not a memoir, but knowing how many
No.
personal things, I
Yeah.
think that's why I love listening to memoirs from
Yeah.
the memoir. So having
Yeah.
you read it, it just put even more of a personal level into
I
this book.
think there is something about hearing writers read. I mean, sometimes I think writers aren't comfortable with reading their own prose, and then it can be not, it's not fun for anyone. But if you're comfortable doing it, I think it can be a really wonderful thing, because you just hear the rhythms as the writer intended them.
Doris has our last question. What are you reading? And I'm going to tack on, and what would you recommend?
Oh, yes. And I'm really, really bad at this question, because my head goes completely blank and empty. I've been reading quite a few books that haven't come out yet, which is frustrating to talk about. But one of them is a memoir by Mark Haddon, who wrote Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime and Poseidon, other things. And this is his memoir called Leaving Home, which I found really moving. It comes out next year, about his background, which in many ways was quite similar to mine, which is kind of bizarre, but also his feelings about art and writing and people who sort of appear to live on the outside of things. He's very open about his own depression and a sort of paranoia, really, about illness. So, and also it's brilliantly illustrated. I didn't realize he's an artist as well. So I always find it interesting when you see what the other thing that writers do. So that was something I've really loved. And the other, I mean, I got the non-fiction, which I haven't read before, and I don't know why. Because for years, people have been saying to me, oh, you should always read Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. And I haven't. And actually, my husband began doing a bit of writing, and he said he was going to read it. So he read it, and I just nicked it from the bed, really, and read it. And I adored it. I think it's a brilliant book about, such a brilliant book about writing and the process. So those are the ones I've just read.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Readers, I want to thank you all for such wonderful and insightful questions. All you readers out there, though, leave those reviews for the Homemade Gods. It means so much. And we've all made a pact to recommend this for more book clubs. But Rachel, I want to especially thank you, and this is all yours, but I want to thank you for bringing everything so close to the surface. We might as well not have skin, for putting your finger in the cracks to see how deep the fissures go, for helping us remember the emptiness of a new beginning, a promise of hope that things might change for the better when they appeared to be at their worst, and reminding us that in the end, we are given so few people to love, and family is everything, even when it falls apart. It was a beautiful book, and I just want to thank you so much for writing it and sharing it. And I know you like to keep it personal, but sharing it with your editor, keep sharing things with your editor so that we can get it in our hands as well. So thank you for that. I will say group in 2 weeks, so November 16th, We're going to hop from England over to Ireland to chat with John Boyne. So please note that this will also be at an earlier time, 3 p.m. Boyne has created a kaleidoscope of 4 interconnected narratives, each representing a different perspective on crime from the points of view of the enabler, the accomplice, the perpetrator, and the victim. His most ambitious work yet, it's called The Elements, is both an engrossing drama and moving examination of why and how we allow crime to occur. In masterful spellbinding prose, he navigates this complex subject with extraordinary empathy and unflinching honesty at every step, challenging us to confront our own conceptions of guilt and innocence. So it sounds like we have more work to do, readers. So y'all get ready for that. All of you out there watching this recording, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and you'll know when the next recorded chat comes up and it's uploaded. So because you don't want to miss out. Feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts. And as always, let me know if you have an author in mind who you think would be great to chat with all of us. If you ever want to join live, check my Instagram, LB the Lover of Books, Facebook group, same name. And I will see everybody in 2 weeks to this night. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Rachel. You were the joy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Y'all have a wonderful night. Bye.